Arm's length reporting for investors who want the whole story. This is the Korelin Economics Report.
Hey, welcome back here to start the second hour of the weekend edition. This is all devoted to politics, KER Politics. My golfing buddy and a close friend, Jeff Dice, suggested our next guest. I was asking Jeff about someone who would speak intelligently on the situation with Gorsuch, the remaining seat as of right now, anyway, on the Supreme Court. Did Trump make a mistake? Is he doing the right thing? Is Gorsuch qualified, et cetera, et cetera? I'll give you my personal opinion real quick. I think he's highly qualified. That's my opinion. Alan Mendenhall, who's an attorney, he has been practicing law for a long time, and he said, and Jeff recommended him by saying, this man is the best that I know. Talk about Gorsuch, Alan, if you would.
Well, thank you very much, Al. Well, Gorsuch is definitely eminently qualified for this position. He's a graduate of Columbia University. He was Phi Beta Kappa. He went to Harvard Law School as a Truman Scholar. He went and got his doctorate at Oxford University as a Marshall Scholar. He studied under the Australian legal philosopher John Finnis, and he sort of has the resume that you would be looking for. There's really nothing in his resume that could be criticized by the left. And in fact, when Obama and Biden and Hillary and Chuck Schumer and Leahy and Feinstein were all voting for his confirmation when in 2006 when he was nominated to the 10th Circuit by George W. Bush, and he passed unanimously then on a voice vote. So apparently they all thought he was eminently qualified, just over 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say that I think what we have right now is we're having emotional, for lack of better terms, emotional responses. The left side of the aisle clearly got blasted in the election. There's no question about that. The American people, regardless of how you want to interpret election results, according to our rules and regulations in the United States, the right-hand side of the aisle definitely won. And I think it's just sour grapes in terms of doing this with Gorsuch. It's even, stressing the fact that, as Vice President Biden at one time was on record as saying, that's what we do. If we want a Supreme Court judge of perhaps a different philosophy in there, and we're able to stop that between now and when the next president, hopefully a Democrat, will get in, we're going to do that.
Well, I think the Democrats would make a huge mistake now if they tried to filibuster this nominee, mainly because he is so qualified, but also because once you force the Republicans to take that nuclear option and that's now on the table, well, then Donald Trump's next nominee, let's say Justice Kennedy steps down. He's 80. Let's say Ginsburg, who's 83, or Breyer, who's 78. Any one of these justices steps down. Well, then, if all you need is a majority to confirm whoever Trump puts forth next,
mm-hmm.
Trump's not going to care about picking someone who's just eminently qualified and fits all the boxes that Democrats are going to vote for. Somebody that's clerked for the Supreme Court, went to the Ivy Leagues, did all these things. He'll just pick. He can pretty much pick whoever he wants, and so the Democrats would be foolish, in my view, to try to filibuster at this point and just
and that's probably the way it's going to shake out, I would think. Now, having said that, I want to ask your opinion about something, and this is maybe swaying a little bit from legality, but I think you're really qualified to at least opine on this particular situation. Would you rather see a Supreme Court wildly majority, let's say, conservative, as opposed to liberal, or would you rather see a balance?
Well, I personally, it gets into how you define conservative and liberal, but I would prefer the court to lean to the right, let's say, primarily because this idea that the Constitution is a living, breathing document that evolves over time, and that justices can sort of, amend it through their own interpretations is a bad one, because the Constitution itself protects a lot of liberties, in particular, the Bill of Rights. And when you have justices that feel that they can revise it over time according to their own standards, then you're opening the door to enable them to implement their own policy preferences, and those are getting more and more status as the years go by.
Alan, I have to tell you, you bring up Kennedy, for example. That came across the newswires yesterday that he was strongly considering at this moment in time to retire. But I would have to say one thing about that. I agree with you about the importance of constitutionality in our country, there is absolutely no question, in my mind anyway, the Constitution really isn't a living, breathing document. And I can bring religion in on this just for a second, and everybody knows what my opinion is about that. I mean, the Bible, for example, the New Testament and the Old Testament, to say that one of those two documents is a living and breathing piece of work, I think, is a huge, huge mistake. And I draw the same analogy. I agree completely with you guys, and I agree completely with Hillsdale College when they say you got to take the Constitution very seriously.
Oh, I agree. I agree completely. And it's interesting that some of the criticisms of Gorsuch coming from the left, from people like Schumer, who's saying he has serious concerns about Gorsuch because Gorsuch dodged answers about the constitutionality of what he called Trump's Muslim ban and about other things. Well, Schumer, this is the same Schumer who just a few years ago on CNN told CNN that there are three branches of government: the House, the Senate, and the President. Well, of course, the House and Senate are both part of the legislative branch, but Schumer completely left off the judicial branch. So, you've got a guy who can't even name the three branches of government criticizing Trump's nominee, Gorsuch, who's a brilliant man. And, there's a sort of desperation, I think, coming from people.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I'm not particularly impressed with Schumer. I watch a lot of video with Schumer, and I'm not particularly impressed with him. But be that as it may, you mentioned that Gorsuch is a brilliant man, eminently qualified. We have about 2 minutes left here. I'd like you to do me a favor. Actually, about 2.5 or 3 minutes. Summarize, if you would, why this man is qualified in the eyes of a fellow attorney.
In the eyes of a federal attorney?
No, fellow attorney, such as yourself.
Oh, a fellow attorney.
There you go.
Well, besides just having the experience and having worked for a major law firm, he's clerked for 2 Supreme Court justices. He clerked on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. He also holds views that are very sophisticated. So when he says that he's an originalist, rather than just saying, I adhere to the original intent of the drafters, he means the original public meaning of the language. So there's a little bit of nuance to that jurisprudence. I think he is the best person we have as far as rolling back the administrative state and curbing bureaucratic excesses, in that he wants to oppose the Chevron doctrine, which comes out of this 1984 case. Mm-hmm. It holds basically that courts should defer to the agency decisions in the interpretation of statutes that those agencies are charged with interpreting. So before Chevron, Congress was primarily responsible for lawmaking, and agencies only dealt in policy if Congress expressly delegated them policymaking powers. But after Chevron, the court changed the nature of executive lawmaking and agency power. So after Chevron, agencies no longer sought a simple point estimate of statutory interpretation, but they developed their own broad interpretations that encompassed a more expansive range of agency policy-making discretion. So what Gorsuch has advocated is rolling back that deference and saying courts ought not to just allow these big federal agencies to be interpreters of the scope of their own powers, that if you let an agency do that, it's just going to keep expanding and keep growing. And I think that's one of the most important positions that Gorsuch has taken, and it's actually one that, who knows, under Donald Trump presidency, maybe the left will like that. Maybe the left will finally realize the problem with these federal agencies and their power. When it's Donald Trump's administration and running, say it's Pruitt running the EPA, maybe the Democrats aren't going to like the power that the EPA has. And maybe they'll start realizing there's too much power in these agencies.
Well, I think what's going to happen, if you want an opinion, is I think over the next 4 years, Trump is going to be successful. I think government perhaps will be cut back. Only when I say cut back, I don't mean just willy-nilly. I mean cut back intelligently. And I think that the U.S. public, American public, is going to realize that this is what we simply needed to do. And I think that it wouldn't surprise me a bit if the left side of the aisle got on that bandwagon shortly. Alan, always a pleasure. Going to have you back soon.